Sometimes I go on a bus, often I walk. It depends how far the journey is that day. But my journey to ceramics seriously began when at the age of 15 I took an entrance exam for the Academy of Art in Birmingham in England, and they offered me a place. I was the youngest there, and I studied painting and had a couple of exhibitions, and I painted for about 10 years and started doing a bit of teaching, and then suddenly looked at my paintings and I realized I wasn't a painter, that I was wasting time doing paintings. And so I thought, what can I do? And I thought sculpture, and I thought, no, I don't want to do a fine arts course. I've done that. I want to do something which which will sort of impose a discipline on me. And I thought, well, maybe ceramic. And so I applied for a ceramic course in Cardiff and was offered a place. This was 10 years later, so I was 28 by then, well, 15 to 18 painting. And and in between I'd done a teaching diploma, you know. And so then I did ceramics for 3 years. I studied, and 2 years later I did MA in sculpture, and I've just been, ever since, I've just been doing my own work with occasional teaching. I've never ever wanted to be a full-time teacher, because that's another profession, an important one, and I think it's very hard to be both a good artist and a good teacher. There are a few people who can be, but there are many people who in the end become not very good artists and very bad teachers, because they're more interested in their own work than they are in the students. And when I came here, I realized that Ingate is surrounded by lush forest. I mean, it's a beautiful forest and interesting fauna and flora. I sorted out about 150 pictures of my work, and then selected some of them and put them on the wall, and then started photographing the forest. And I wanted to use these. I wanted to try and identify a common theme or some linked themes through the pieces. And so what's on the table are various panels which come from different aspects of work that I've made. Originally, these started as test pieces, but suddenly I thought, hitherto all my reliefs have been sequential. You know, one leads into the next. They don't need to be sequential, they could be much more random. So this time I'm making all these pieces, and I'm going to put them, hopefully, intuitively on a wall. And the relationships, what I'm not trying to do is to get a sequential thing that, oh, this leads to that, etc. But that they relate in all sorts of different ways to each other. And at the moment I put them on here like this because this is the format of the table. At the moment I'm just going to put them all on and then select what works and what doesn't. I'm working on one here which is one of the ones I've spent the most time on, and I think it's probably likely that it won't be included, but I will finish it anyway and place it here, and when I've got them all and when they're all fired, I'll be able to make that decision. I'm using a technique which I developed a long time ago of putting dry pieces of clay together with wet clay. And it used to be said that that could not be done, that was not allowed. But I developed it because I was travelling all over the place working maybe for a month or 2 months in New York at NYU, and then going to Oslo in Norway, and then maybe to Prague in Czech Republic, and I would have pieces which weren't finished, and I'd leave them in all the different places. And when I went back, I'd carry on working with the dry pieces, and started making, putting them together with wet clay, and it can work very well, providing you're using the right clay. In fact, in Canada, I gave a demonstration several years ago in front of 200 people where I showed them the technique. And afterwards, a man came up to me who was professor at the University of Manitoba and said to me for 30 years he had told his students, you're not allowed, you can't put wet clay with dry clay. And he said next semester he has to go back and tell them he was wrong. And since then, this is a long time ago, since then maybe it's not so revolutionary, because I think more people are starting to do it. And of course, since then paper clay has arrived, so a lot of people use paper clay to put dry pieces together. But in fact, you can do it with almost any clay that's dry, especially if it's grobbed. But you have to just check with each type of clay. Whether it works with this terracotta, I don't know, because I haven't done it before, used it before. But we will see. And of course, I've made my usual mistake of doing two right hands. So one of them is going to have to change. But I'm not very pleased with that hand, so that hand can change. And because I'm working on this fairly small scale, I'm using the sticks to maintain the cavity space, so that the cavity goes right through the arm. And just to make sure that the air is not going to be trapped, I put a tiny pinhole there. So that is one arm. That will sort of probably go there, or there rather. I don't know which way it's going to go. So I'm putting one leg on now, having put wet clay on both edges, and with especially with grog clay, it's important just to press the edges on and not to smear the clay all over the surface as you would with paper clay. It's one of the most difficult things to get people to understand at times. So that is the one leg, and the other leg is going to go sort of like that in a minute. And so this one will go like that, more or less. And I will have to do some work on that when it's dried up a bit. Maybe that's too far, so maybe that needs to come up like that. This may be one of the problems with this clay, that it's not quite as malleable as the other, but it doesn't really matter because I'm going to need to change the angle of the arm anyway, so I'll do that in a minute. Let me just... Sort of approach is coming from that tile carving experience, because the tile carving requires a more linear, more detailed approach. Also, I like to draw. I draw a lot. All my ideas I develop really through drawing initially, and so these are, if you like, drawings on clay. And indeed, several people have written about my three-dimensional sculptures that they are actually three-dimensional drawings. These are some of the panels that I've made before, and they all come from different ideas. Some of them, now this is a rather strange one. This has got a sort of possibly a female figure holding a baby pig, and there's a lizard there, etc. This figure comes from a tree that I saw in the forest. And several of these are related to the trees that I've seen. This one is to do about Inga rock, because basically this dancing figure is holding the mask of an eagle, and there is this tradition that the rock was an eagle that landed and turned into a rock. So this one is a little bit about celebrating the origins of the Inga community. And all these different concerns hopefully will add up to something, to some sort of thought process that people can relate to. What's important for me too is that the images I use resonate in the mind of the spectator, connect with something that's in the spectator's mind. Because I'm not telling a story as such. I'm trying to sort of switch on a memory, switch on a thought, switch on a connection in the mind of each spectator, which is a pretty enormous thing to hope to do. But that artists have to be pretentious and ridiculous in what they try to do. And I am a highly pretentious, highly ridiculous person.